Sorry. Welcome back. It's the Rachel Maddow Show here on Air America Radio, where I bring you further news from the Department of whether or not there should be intense media coverage of politicians' religious and political allies. On the Democratic side, apparently, the answer is yes with an exclamation point. As in the week heading into the North Carolina and Indiana primaries, Senator Obama's former pastor, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, literally got more news coverage than everything about Senator Clinton. Honestly, there was a study by Project for Excellence in Journalism about the press coverage, the campaign coverage in the week heading into North Carolina and Indiana's primaries. They found that Jeremiah Wright got 42% of all of the campaign coverage last week. Hillary Clinton, everything about Hillary Clinton, got 41% of the coverage. So on the Democratic side, the answer to the question of whether there should be intense media scrutiny of politicians, religious and political allies, that answer is an emphatic yes. On the Republican side, as we have seen, not so much. Pastor John Hagee, at this point, is still essentially, there have been a few pops in the mainstream media, but it's still essentially a marginal Air America only kind of story, despite the fact that Hagee continues to make news and to advance the storyline publicly of the most controversial things about himself. You remember who John Hagee is, right?
There was to be a homosexual parade there on the Monday that the Katrina came. And the promise of that parade was that it was going to reach a level of sexuality never demonstrated before in any of the other gay pride parades.
Pioneer
so I believe that the judgment of God is a very real thing. And I believe that the Hurricane Katrina was in fact the judgment of God against the city of New Orleans.
That's just a little reminder for you about who John Hagee is. You probably know by now, if you are a fan of this show at least, that Senator John McCain personally wooed John Hagee for his endorsement. He personally spent time at Hagee's church in Texas. He asked for John Hagee's endorsement. He received John Hagee's endorsement. He appeared alongside him when Hagee gave him his endorsement, and confronted since February, when he got the endorsement, with some of Hagee's most controversial remarks, John McCain says he will not reject Hagee's endorsement. Hagee last Friday had his PR company retract those comments about New Orleans for him, sort of. Hagee had a PR company issue a statement last Friday that said he should not have presumed to know the mind of God. He should not have presumed to know the will of God, even though it sure looked like Hurricane Katrina was a curse against New Orleans for having too much of the gay. So last Friday, he retracted his New Orleans Katrina curse comments. Yesterday, he unretracted them. Yesterday, the Dallas Morning News reports that Hagee was on a conference call with religious conservatives, and he was asked why he retracted his New Orleans Katrina curse comments. Dallas Morning News said Hagee responded by saying he didn't actually retract them. He said, God controls hurricanes and God always punishes unconfessed sin. So in other words, he unretracted his comments on New Orleans being cursed by God with Hurricane Katrina. In other words, he still thinks God sent that hurricane as punishment to New Orleans for New Orleans having too much of the gay. Now, the spin on the ratio of Jeremiah Wright coverage to John Hagee coverage in the mainstream media so far, the defense, is that they have not covered Hagee as much as they have covered Jeremiah Wright, even though people now know how controversial Hagee is, and even though he's on tape saying a lot of these controversial things. The spin is that Hagee is not now getting the coverage that Jeremiah Wright got because Hagee is not out in public making inflammatory follow-up public on-tape comments, quotable comments like Reverend Wright did. That's the spin. Now that's why he's not getting so much coverage, because he's keeping quiet. Actually, John Hagee is now making new follow-up public inflammatory comments on subjects that John McCain has yet to distance himself from the pastor about. How come Hagee is still off limits for the national press?